To another hour of WVSU News. You just tuned into S Squared. I am Shanice Finch.
And I'm Shelby Arnold.
We are on location in Valdosta, Georgia, also known as Toxic Titletown.
We recently spoke with many people to get their ideas on environmental racism and how it affects Valdosta along with other areas. We spoke with Dr. Williams, a notable professor at Valdosta State University, and he gave us his definition of environmental racism.
Environmental racism is any policy, practice, intention, directive that in one way or another leads to the disproportionate environmental consequences, usually by race or color in the United States, predominantly. And so it's to the extent to which different forms of human action lead to one group of people experiencing environmental degradation of one kind or another, more so than another population.
Every person in power, in authority in Valdosta is white. The mayor is white, the city manager is white, the assistant city manager is white, the deputy city manager is white, the police chief is white. Everybody who has power over the lives of black folk in Valdosta, even though Valdosta is anywhere between 52 and 56% black, is white. Everybody.
Anytime you have chemical plants, landfills, heavy-duty industry, for example, there's also a concrete plant right back here. All of that's located in a community full of people, full of children, low income, people of color, and so this is a great example right here.
My mother lives off of Clay Road, and the area where she lives at is where most of the upper middle class or wealthy African American people stay. It's right around the corner from ABM, Southern Cotton, and Arizona Chemicals. They have been paying all of these extreme prices for these houses and this property when at any given time when they come out the house, they'll get caught by the smells and the chemicals.
In Valdosta, there was a debate over the building of a biomass incinerator. It was estimated that the facility would emit 87 to 89 tons of tiny particulate matter per year.
This would expose the people who live, work, worship, and go to school in that area to a higher probability of disease. The citizens that would have been affected are predominantly black and live in a low socioeconomic bracket. This is what local leaders had to say.
You will notice that the proposed site for that biomass plant was near a predominantly black community, near black churches, near schools that were predominantly black, which meant that our children and our seniors were at risk more than anybody else, led by the NAACP, SCLC, and others from the University of Valdosta, Valdosta University. That thing was stopped.
That's probably what happened with the movement against the biomass incinerator in Valdosta, that enough people were able to use the question of justice, the frame of justice, to convince enough people to pressure, for instance, the Industrial Zoning Board and other people, other players, that this wasn't going to create any kind of justice because it was sited next to a predominantly African American community, and it wouldn't really create any more justice that already existed. Not much probably exists anyways. A lot of poor folks in the city.
We want to carry out our mission by being the voice of our business community, and we want to share any information that could be beneficial to enhancing the social well-being or tackling any quality of life issues that we have.
That was going to be in an area that's quite near to a large predominantly black church, quite near to an elementary school, near a population that if you go 5 miles around is predominantly minority. Sounds like a textbook case of environmental racism. Actually, having dealt with people down at the Industrial Authority for some time, I doubt that was their intention. Now you could well argue intention and suspension, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I don't really think that was their motivation.
I think, well, when people were fighting it, they weren't saying the phrase environmental racism, even though it was going to be located within a mile of two schools that serve kids of color. So they weren't really using that language. Racism is the R word. Communities don't like to acknowledge they have a problem with it. I think they saw biomass as an isolated incident. It's a major problem in the United States. So Valdosta is it's just like every other city in the country. People of color are marginalized. They're having to deal with things other groups of people aren't having to deal with. So yeah, it is.
The fact is, when looking at national data, 75% of the South's worst contaminated dumps are in Black communities. About half of all Asians, Pacific Islanders, and Native Americans live in communities with uncontrolled toxic waste sites, and that number goes up to 3 out of 5 for Hispanic and African Americans. In minority areas, abandoned hazardous waste sites take 20% longer to be placed on the national priority list for the Superfund cleanup program. 44% of urban African American children are at risk for lead poisoning. That's 4 times the rate of white children. The Navajo Nation, covering 16 million acres across 3 states, is home to more than 1,000 abandoned uranium mines and 4 former uranium mills.